Well, we are getting an inside look as to what a second Trump term could look like.
There are so many things in this interview that are dystopian. He wants deportation camps.
Yeah.
I mean, this is stuff that, I mean, what I thought was so shocking was he was admitting things. I mean, the monitoring periods, the monitoring women's cycles is right out of Handmaid's Tale.
But he wouldn't support monitoring pregnancies, even if a state decided to do that.
Well, he's made it very clear that he's not going to go and weigh in and try to push various states and how they want to go in and set up their particular rules and restrictions. That's going to be up to the states.
I tell you, Trump says, all true, what I'm about to inform you. He says he would carry out a deportation operation to remove more than 11 million people from the country. He would let red states monitor women's pregnancies and prosecute those who violate abortion bans. He would gut the civil service. He would close the White House Pandemic Preparedness Office. And he's on the cover of Time magazine. He should be on the cover of Doing Time magazine. That's the...
Oh, that's gonna hurt! This is gonna be a little different than my usual political video. Call it a PSA rather than some political satire with a watered down Scottish accent punctuated with some funny memes. Because in the wake of Trump's Time magazine interview where he laid bare what he intends to do if given a second pop at fascism, it's time we speak candidly about what that would mean and the necessary steps that we have to take to avoid it. If there's one thing that Donald Trump isn't, it's shy in his outlook. Conceited he is not regarding his hopes and dreams for a better America in his mind.
A couple of states I won't mention, but a couple of states really surprised people. But basically the states decide on abortion, and people are absolutely thrilled with the way that's going on. On day one of the Trump presidency, I'm restoring the travel ban, suspending refugee admissions.
A dream for him, but for most, with the guardrails off in a second term, it will be a nightmare. Make no mistake of that.
You know, when I asked him, President Trump, would you be comfortable with states prosecuting women who get abortions after the ban? He said, it's irrelevant whether I'm comfortable or not. I don't have to be comfortable. The states are going to decide. When I said, President Trump, what about states monitoring women's pregnancies to know whether they've gotten abortions after the ban? He said they might just do that. He would also say that he would allow for states to have abortion laws in the other side of the direction, too. So President Trump is really staking out this states' rights issue when it comes to abortion.
Yeah, I mean, but you did paint a fairly draconian picture there that states might monitor women's pregnancies. And by virtue of not opposing that, isn't that sort of a tacit acceptance of that? I mean, I do wonder whether he can get away with that, because Joe Biden certainly does not think that that is a tenable position and has been saying as much on the campaign trail. I think they've made an ad to that effect. I mean, did you get any sense of hesitation on Trump's part when you asked him such a specifically Handmaid's Tale-like end times scenario?
I didn't get any hesitation from Trump at all.
In an exclusive interview with Time magazine's Eric Cortellessa, the Republican frontrunner was as outspoken as ever about the policies he would support and enact if elected again in November. Promises like the mass deportation of millions of migrants, as well as suggesting that the United States would not defend foreign allies from aggression in certain circumstances. Vowing to eviscerate federal bureaucracy, as well as staffing those career civil service roles with political loyalists, using law enforcement to target foes, and painted a pretty dire picture of America's future if he doesn't return to the White House.
We were talking about leadership. I mean, that is because Donald Trump has hammered over and over again this lie that the election in 2020 was stolen. I don't think there are a lot of suburban housewives who are saying, you know, who are on their own sort of going out and saying, I dispute the results of the election in Arizona. That's a function of Donald Trump and his people going out and telling lies about what happened in 2020. And now you have an interview where he's saying, essentially, if I don't like the outcome of this election, I'm going to do that again. That is a fundamentally dangerous thing. It is also, to David's point, a political loser. I mean, we've seen time and again, we saw in the midterms in 2022, the concept of political violence, the notion that our democracy was under threat, was motivating to people. Voters said, I reject this.
Which sounds eerily familiar, no? Not just to fascist regimes that have plagued history, but to his first term. Only now we have his record to show that they are not just empty threats. He seeks to expand, and of course, in an ironic oxymoron to the small government, big on freedom type of messaging that Republicans claim to support, Trump would expand the powers of his presidency that he would then wield against his political opponents. See his endless calls for presidential immunity as an example. And it wouldn't just be his political opponents that would be targeted. It would be massive groups of people in America, specifically women, as we've seen already. Now, during the interview, Trump cowardly sidestepped questions about what specific policy he would support as president regarding abortion, arguing once again that the decisions are made at the state level, which, as we've seen in Arizona, result in some draconian measures put into place, to which, according to Trump's correspondent, he is all in favor of.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it. And I'm proud to have done it.
On the issue, and he supports that. It was his Supreme Court justices, after all, that overturned Roe v. Wade, which was the biggest win for the pro-life movement.
I think this is a giant step forward for Alabama. I think it's a victory tonight for women, for families, for Alabama in general.
So that was Marilyn Land's last night after her victory in a special election to fill a vacant House seat in Alabama.
Abortion, IVF, playing a role. Democrat running on abortion and IVF access wins the special election in Alabama. Marilyn Lands flipped a state house seat in the deep red state by 25 percentage points. Best describes the issue's view on abortion, always legal, 35%, mostly legal, 24%.
This week, Donald Trump claimed that overturning Roe was, quote, really working out well for people. But we are seeing just how untrue that is and how messy it can be when individual states are left to regulate reproductive rights. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments over whether Idaho's near total abortion ban violates federal law by preventing doctors from properly treating women with pregnancy complications. Down in Arizona, the state Senate is poised to take up a bill that would repeal their Civil War-era abortion ban. The State House narrowly passed the legislation this week, but a majority of Republicans voted to keep the ban in place.
And as we know with Project 2025, he's aligning himself with religious extremists hell-bent on not only banning abortion, but as Trump's surrogate and potential administration official Jason Miller stated, a future Trump administration would allow states to monitor women's pregnancies.
He wouldn't support monitoring pregnancies even if a state decided to do that.
Well, he's made it very clear that he's not going to go and weigh in and try to push various states and how they want to go in and set up their particular rules and restrictions. That's going to be up to the states.
Yeah, remember that whole small government thing? And while voters have sided with abortion rights advocates every time the issue has been placed on the ballot, it's not enough to just assume that this will be an indicator for what happens in November. It's just far too big of a risk to take.
I tell you, Trump says, all true, what I'm about to inform you. He says he would carry out a deportation operation to remove more than 11 million people from the country. He says he would use the military to build migrant detention camps. He would let red states monitor women's pregnancies and prosecute those who violate abortion bans. He would, at his personal discretion, withhold funds appropriated by Congress. He would fire any U.S. attorney who wouldn't carry out his order to prosecute. He's weighing pardons for everyone who attacked the Capitol January 6th. He said he might not come to the aid of an ally in Europe or Asia if he felt that country wasn't paying enough. He would gut the civil service. He would close the White House Pandemic Preparedness Office and staff his administration only with those who believe the election was stolen from him. And when they asked about dictatorship, he said, I think a lot of people like it. And he's on the cover of Time magazine. He should be on the cover of Doing Time magazine.
Which leads to my next point of this video. As I said in a sequence of tweets regarding the volatile state of affairs on college campuses across America, young people who make up large swaths of the Democratic voter base are upset and in turn making their voice heard. And when feeling disgruntled over the current administration's handling of a certain issue, being told that the possible future alternative would be way worse, it actually fails to acknowledge that first and foremost there is an issue at all. Young voters are organizing diligently to protest Biden's unwavering support of Israel. So saying that, oh well, Trump's worse, sends the message that there's no need for reproach at the current moment, when there is, and there has been a shift thanks to said organizing. It may not seem like it, but don't take my word for it. Listen to what AOC said on the matter.
What do you say to a young progressive or an Arab American who says to you, I just can't vote for Biden again after what he's enabled in Gaza? What do you say to them?
I mean, I think everyone comes to this prospect in this conversation with a different history, different background, what they bring. You know, for an individual Palestinian American that has had their family killed, there is nothing, I mean, I am not here to lecture anyone. I also think that this election is more, in my personal view, I believe this election is about more than the president. And also, it's not just one election that's happening. We're having hundreds of elections.
Yes.
The balance of Congress, the balance of the House, the balance of the Senate, and the presidency. And I have a vested interest in protecting democracy, not just here domestically, but globally. And it isn't, I truly do not believe this as a lesser of two evils type of situation. I think about what conditions do I want to be organizing under in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
We can look at both of these individuals oppositionally as well, depending on what issue you have. But I would rather, even in places of stark disagreement, I would rather be organizing under the conditions of Biden as an opponent on an issue than Trump, who is not, he seeks to dismantle American democracy. And I am taking that personally very seriously, because we will not be able to organize for any movement towards anything if we are facing the jailing of dissidents. I mean, this is the kind of authoritarianism that he threatens.
Fascism.
And we have to take it seriously.
And this, I want you to hear this, this is where discourse is so important. Not simply just stating who would be worse on a matter, but which candidate would be more malleable and receptive to those organizing for change. The answer is unequivocally Biden. There will be no organizing under Donald Trump. In that same plan for his next term, just look at how Trump plans to deal with dissent in his Agenda 47, which of course got raving reviews from white nationalist sympathizers like Stephen Miller. I'm not here to relay this diluted response of, yeah, well, it's a binary election, so you have to choose one. It's about, as AOC vocalized, in an answer that I thought was very well thought out in response to a question regarding disgruntled voters who feel like Biden's foreign policy has alienated them. Who would you rather organize under in an attempt to instill change? That needs to be the focus instead of this impulsive disparagement that accompanies any conversation regarding this matter. Because doing that just negates the issue and makes voters feel like they're not being heard. Because it's not just that the alternative would be far worse, which I agree, he would be. It's that there needs to be a conversation happening now. While this administration has proven through its actions and its changes that have taken place, they are willing to listen, and yeah, not as much as people would like, but are malleable to the conversations that are happening. Under Donald Trump, there simply won't be a seat at the table. Dictators like to sit alone.
I mean, if it had not been for Mike Pence, we don't know if it would have held. I think it's worth remembering that Donald Trump has already tried to become a dictator. When he attempted to annul a free and fair election and declare himself the victor, if he had succeeded, he would have been ruling as a dictator, not as an elected official. And so the question arises, how could you possibly put someone like that back in office? And I think it's important to understand that the core of his support, the really white-hot core of the Trump movement, does want to see this system overthrown. They do want a different form of government. Some of them want a Christian nation, which is also contrary to what the founders established. Some of them want a white nation, a nation where whites enjoy the privileges that they had enjoyed in the past. Many people want to turn the clock back. And I think we just have to recognize that. It's not so shocking when you look at the entirety of American history. These groups have always existed. What's happened now is they've taken control of the Republican Party, and they have someone as their leader who is willing to destroy the system. That's what he is. He's a wrecker.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.